I guess, not in the vein of fitness or finance, but we're enjoying a little bit of whiskey here too. Can you?
This is why you work in finance, is you can afford a nice scotch.
That's right.
So.
And what is this like?
So this is an Ardbeg Ugadal.
There you go.
It's a Scotch whiskey from Islay, and it's actually 108 proof. So a little bit stronger than some of the other stuff I've been drinking.
I like it,
but it's not bad. It's pretty good. It's a sipping whiskey. So
yeah,
it'll add some mellowness and character to our conversation. Hopefully not too much character.
Yeah, that's right. So earlier today we went to the gym and trained a little bit too. So I know you've been into this a little bit too, but I've been a little bit more, I guess, into it for a while too, with like competitive powerlifting, things like that too, and training for strength rather than just going to the gym to get a bro pump or however most people, I guess, traditionally think about strength training. So maybe talk a little bit about like how you got into that, and then I can kind of bring in like what we've been doing kind of since then a little bit.
So I have a confession to make.
Okay.
I actually did get into this for the aesthetics,
but I'm sorry. I know that makes me a worse person. But no, actually, training for strength is actually much more satisfying because you see the weights on the bar move up every day. Actually, squatting is my favorite thing to do, which is funny because it has kind of the least impact on your aesthetics. But it's it's just a really good full body exercise that really engages everything.
And it's like you said too, you can see the progression going up rather than.
Well, that's why I like squats so much. Is that it's been very kind to me. My squat progress has basically continued. One or two small plateaus since I started lifting about 8 months ago, maybe 7-8 months ago. But it's really been pretty consistent, which is a great reason to love an exercise.
Yeah, and just in general, kind of versus the traditional model of like going to the gym and training, is that you have a specific set of exercises you want to get better at. Especially like with powerlifting, it's like squat, the bench press, deadlift, lift as much weight as you can in all of those categories. So kind of having that as your end goal in mind, even if you have other things you want to get into along the way. But those are kind of like the three exercises or those main compound exercises that kind of ground you and make up the bulk of your training.
Yeah. Actually, we were talking about this earlier. My deadlift's really been suffering recently, but my bench and my squat have been doing pretty well. So
2 out of 3 is pretty good.
As long as something is moving, as long as one of the big guys is moving.
Exactly.
1 or 2, ideally.
And 2, that goes into the realm of programming specifically, where getting to nerd out a little bit for especially powerlifting.
You can talk about like the science of programming and why
periodization. But I mean, at the end of the day, the
conjugate method.
the thing at the end of the day is maintaining some kind of consistency, having some kind of progressive overload in mind, and then knowing what exercises you want to get to the goals you want to. So thinking about that here too is like, so with progressive overload, either if you're lifting more weight on the bar, more repetitions, more sets, maybe you don't have to rest as much, so you're getting a little more fit in that sense. And exercise selection, so if you need, if you want bigger legs, you're not going to do the bench press because that doesn't affect your legs, so don't do that.
I've come close to straining a quad while benching, so I've definitely almost strained quads while overhead pressing.
Just having that kind of like, I guess, definition in mind to see where you're going is really important.
Yeah, it's really true. And I like that you put consistency first. That's always something. I've had a couple friends who have started lifting since I've started lifting. And the first thing I always tell them is, there's what you would do in an ideal world, but the thing that's going to affect your progress the most is if you can get in the gym at least 3 days a week, regardless of what you're doing. And so pick something that you enjoy, because if you can be consistent with it, consistency really trumps everything else.
Yeah, like it doesn't have to even specific be revolving around, the compound exercise and stuff. If you like CrossFit, do CrossFit. If you're a body,
not CrossFit.
Said a bad word there, but bodybuilding or whatever. Just some kind of, the thing is too, especially a lot of people who aren't as familiar with strength training and heavier kind of exercises, or pushing yourself and your limits in that way, are kind of like scared of it a little bit too, especially if you don't know a lot about it. So definitely inform yourself on it going into it, talk to people in the field in the sense, and just do as much research as you can to prepare yourself. But also, you're gonna have a little trial and error, which is fine, but just like pace yourself, start easy, and then like find those ways to make small progressive increments over time. It's really like the most important thing.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Being consistent to being faithful to the idea of progressive overload, where you have some measurable way to increase your progress. Some of my longest plateaus have been because I started messing around with my rep ranges, and one week I would be doing sets of 4, the next week I'd be doing sets of 6, then I'd drop back down to sets of 3, and I kind of was trying harder every week maybe, but there was no real, I didn't have any measurable way to say, oh look, I got stronger over these 3 weeks.
Yes, that's the thing, is if you can't consistently stick with something, or if you're jumping around as much too, you're not going to be able to see where you're making progress or what's working and what's not. Especially I think that comes into terms of exercise selection, because if you're switching your exercises every week or every other week or something like that, how are you going to be able to consistently progress at something?
Bro, you have to confuse muscles. Right. Muscles have these little brains in them, and you have to
muscle brains. Yeah, I mean,
can't do more than 3 reps of any exercise, or else the muscles catch on.
That's right.
Don't want that. I like what you were saying earlier about some people, or one of the scary things about weightlifting can be especially once you get to heavier weights, this fear of hurting yourself. And actually both of us have had at least minor injuries in the last couple months.
Yeah, I mean, but even at the end of the day, there's no way of specifically attributing that to like the way exact. I mean, sometimes your form, obviously you can, if you have better form, there is a protective effect when it comes to injuries. But at the end of the day, you can't just pick it down to one specific thing. Even if like, oh man, I felt my back tweak or pop or something when I was deadlifting, I'm like, yeah, maybe something caused it, or there was something slightly acute there, but at the end of the day, you don't really know if it's from that. And the best way to protect yourself against injuries is to make your muscles stronger so they're more resilient. So, and there's ways to work around it too, even if you're just changing the exercise a little bit, or the range of motion, or your tempo, or your reps. There's ways to work around it without making the injury worse and actually being able to get better in the long term.
Yeah. So I actually, last time we were lifting, not today, I tweaked my back squatting, actually with a set that was supposed to be a warm-up set. And so I had to kind of take a week off of heavy squatting, and then when I eased back into it, I was more careful with my form. I was, I stuck with slightly lighter weight for a little bit, and I thought about racing a little bit harder in a little bit different way. And actually it ended up breaking a plateau for me. So,
yeah, or like you'll hit a PR afterwards too,
Yeah, so that's one of the things I like about squats, is there's dangerous exercise.
Squat infomercial here.
They love squats. You have to squat. You have to squat.
He's not getting paid, we swear. Yeah, and then there's a big argument going on kind of in the way of like, what's the best style to make that progress in? Is it just adding, if you're doing starting strength linear progression model or something, the novice LP like that, it's just, adding 5-10 pounds a week for the first couple of weeks. I mean,
every workout.
Yeah, as a novice, you can do that because you're just not acclimated to the stress yet, and your body's able to adapt to it real quick and recover. But after a while, too, those same kind of models maybe not work in the long term. And that's why I think auto-regulation, specifically like RP and other similar things like that, although they sound really complicated, the premise when you boil it down is pretty simple, is if you squatted 300 pounds one day, and that was, a couple months ago, and it was a good day, you were feeling good, everything was kind of going right, well, that's not how you're going to be every single day throughout every single week. So you have to regulate to it, kind of find the little balance point in there too. Some days you'll be able to push it a little bit, some days you'll have to lean off of it a little bit, and that's kind of with that model training, I think it's more sustainable over the long-term period rather than the strict percentages, or
you're not going to burn yourself out by failing a heavy squat 5 times in 1 week. That can put your body in a lot of
yeah, well, it doesn't do anything for you long term or even short term, really, because you're just going to keep failing. But that is something that once you understand a little bit more, and that's the way you can really learn your own body at the same time too, is where those limits are, where those boundaries are. Be like, I had a rough day, I didn't get as much sleep as I want, I could have, eat a little bit more, this thing's really stressing me out at work or something like that. So just go into the gym and get some work in, it doesn't have to be a PR every single session. And there's kind of like those days would be really good, and then the other days where just getting the work in, and then a bad day.
Yeah, I like what you said about even in the bad days, make sure you get something in. The habit of just getting through the gym doors can be really important. But I remember one of the lifters that I watch his YouTube videos sometimes, he said something like, if you realize you're having a bad day, your first couple sets maybe don't even go the way you want, it's also okay to just cut a workout short and go home, not, come back the next day. Make sure you come back the next day. But once you've gotten in the gym and you've gotten some of the work in, then, maybe switch exercises.
Yeah, and that's where you...
working right? But realize when some things are going right.
Yeah, and that's where you can prioritize what's important to you. So if you're a powerlifter, for example, and you have your squat and your bench that day, and those are your main exercises, and then you have some other assistant exercises, which are important in the long term, but if you miss them, it's not like you're going to forget how to do a chin up or, a curl or something like that too. You don't really need to practice the technique of that as much too as the bigger lifts with more weight, because that's going to be more indicative of your long-term process. So just get those main lifts in, and then either cut some of the assistance reps short or exercise short, or drop the weight, or however you want to do it, and chalk it up and be like,
I mean, you saw it today. Today my deadlift was really bad, and so I ended up I think I only did a couple of working singles, even maybe 3 heavy singles.
Yeah,
and then I ended up not doing any back off sets. But then my bench was great. Hit a couple PRs. So just move on.
That's the way to do it. No, exactly. And I think for me personally at least, it really speaks to this kind of strength training style, kind of pushing yourself to those kind of limits too. I think a lot of it is more mental fortitude than necessarily even just your body too. Because people say get in the zone and you can push yourself and things like that too. But it's really important once you know that if you're going for a new PR or trying to fix something about your form or something, that you're really taking the time methodically going through it and being able to understand where you're at now and be like, okay, I can push myself to this next step, I can push myself to this next step. And that really does a lot for self-confidence, or just even applying it to other areas of your life in general.
Yeah, I think that's really true. It's been really fun for me to, when I was just starting out, I'd have a really hard workout set. It's like, oh man, I expect to wake up tomorrow and my arms will be like 3 inches bigger and stuff. But I feel like I really have seen progress, at least in the numbers that I'm able to put up over the last several months. And that's really fun to see. It's like, all right, it wasn't just something that I worked hard at a couple of days or a couple of weeks. This is something that I've decided to make a change in my life with, the way that I approach exercise. And it's been paying off in some ways. So that's really fun to, kind of gives you a sense of agency. You see, like, all right, I was able to stick to this, be consistent, and get the results that I wanted to get. And hopefully we'll keep getting results that I want to keep getting. So,
yeah, it's definitely a lifetime endeavor, I think, especially with strength training and stuff.
We were just talking about where we hope to be in 2-3 years, even.
Yeah, short term in the grand scheme of things, but still important.
Yeah.
And especially with strength training too, the injury rates and stuff like that too are so much lower than other traditional sports, even soccer, basketball, and other things where you're doing a lot more dynamic movement as opposed to statically, in a certain position, lifting the weight in a certain range of motion pretty consistently that you can repeat it for, which is great for really anybody because it's something you can pick up easy. You can learn it. Some of it's intuitive, some of it might, maybe you're better at one thing than another and you have to learn a little bit. And that's where you can find other friends and resources to get into that too. But it's something that most people have a gym membership or a way to get some weights or something like that. You don't need the best equipment. You don't need state of the art. You just really need a couple hours a week and some consistency and a general scheme outline of where you're going. Not that you're just kind of shooting in the dark in a sense too, because that'll save you a lot of time and headache later.
Yeah, don't program hop. be consistent with the type of stuff you're doing. But
a couple months.
It's not hard to. I've been learning a lot about this stuff, and some of the things we've learned about the human body as a society are really impressive. In some ways, we also really still don't know that much, though. So you have to have some baseline knowledge, but don't worry about it if you're
not into it.
Well, no, I just mean if you feel like, oh man, like I don't know what to think, like everyone's saying different things, like everyone agrees on the basics, and just simple things work.
Simple.
Don't overthink.
Yeah, it's razor. The simplest explanation is normally the correct one in most cases. But so I guess pivoting from flexing our physical muscles to maybe our mental and financial muscles.
I love my muscles.
Probably don't want to say that out loud ever again. It'd be kind of weird, a little narcissistic, but fair enough. Like I said too, how
working out is the best part of my day a lot of days. So.
No, I agree too. It's kind of just that rock constant, then you can be like, oh yeah, cool, I have that going, looking
Had a
forward
bad
to it.
day at work, but lifted a lot of weight, so good day.
It was a good day. We're all, exactly. I mean, a lot of people look at it that way too, as well, which is fine. I mean, if that's what you're into.
Then the problem is you have a bad day at work and you have a bad day at the gym. And it's just all over.
And then you go home and drink some whiskey.
Whiskey will never let me down.
There you go. And
Don't worry, I'm not now.
all right. And
Would have to cut that section.
no, that's definitely staying in.
No.
But so when I was saying that it was applicable to other aspects of your life too, having that consistency and seeing that progress. So a lot of people can literally see that, you know, in their strength training, in their work life, in their relationship life, however they want to define it too, and how that can go over. So let's say we can apply that same model to something like personal finance, or getting your, I guess, all your ducks in a row in that sense too. You're constantly putting the work in each day, you know, you're going to work, you're making money, you're saving money, and then you have to make decisions, you know, instead of, you know, do I skip the gym this day, or do I buy this expensive thing that I need don't actually need, you know, do we need 2 bottles of whiskey or just 1, you know, it's always 2.
Maybe not 3, but
but just kind of those little choices kind of too, even if, you know, bring that back to the strength training world too, those little things kind of that you can slowly make progress at, that you can control day to day, because you can't control big things day to day.
I mean, that's what we were talking about with linear progression, is it's not, you know, like 2.5 pound plates. Like those add up over time. You keep it up.
You get a few of those.
So, yeah. 3% interest? What? That sounds like nothing.
I guess over long term too. And just in a sense too, I mean, I have a particular thought on, I guess, typical, people would say, you know, consumer debt or other basic things like that too, with especially like cars or other kind of things that you can finance. But what's maybe a little tidbit you could talk about that too, like how does that, you know, maybe affect maybe a long-term plan somebody has, like, you know, they want the house, they want a nice car and stuff too, but, you know, maybe wait for a little bit, save up the money, or, you know, how does that work? What's the mindset?
It's always better to wait, I think. Well, it's funny how many times it's like, oh man, this would be really cool. Maybe if I just wait a little bit longer, you know, I'll push it off a little bit. It's like, oh man, it's been like 3 months that I've gotten by without that thing that I really thought that I needed.
Yeah, exactly.
But, and you know, sometimes if you still want the, you know, there have been some things, I guess the most recent thing was like a new pair of shoes. And like, I was like, oh, like, I don't actually need a new pair of shoes. The one that I have is fine. And then a couple months later, it's like, all right, you know, like, I should really spend money on this. These old ones are really not looking good. They're going to be a bit of a pain. It's like, all right, well, then you know. Yeah. But like, you know, my car isn't a particularly fancy car, you know, but it's like, and sometimes I see friends driving a nice car, and it's like, maybe I should have done something else. Maybe I should have made a different decision. But then it's, you know, the next day I'm like, no, like,
especially with cars too. I mean, they appreciate in value so quick, and just the regular main chips put into them. It's like, unless you really have the money to throw around, or you like really like cars and that's like your one thing that you like really want to focus on.
Well, it's funny. So a lot of people at my work go out to eat regularly for lunch instead of bringing lunch from home. And you know, sometimes I'm like, oh man, like around here, sometimes lunch costs $15, so that's $75 a week if you go out every day. It starts to look like a lot of money over the course of a month. And someone made the point that, well, actually, you could eat out all year and it's still much less than, you know, that's just a rounding error on the type of car that you have, for example. Like the difference in money you save. I mean, you know, if you're getting a nice lunch every day, then maybe not. But if you're just going out a couple times a week,
to the dollar, man,
then it's only a couple thousand a year, and that's, you know, that's the difference between getting a $5,000 and an $8,000 used car. Like, those are both cheap cars, but that is what matters. But I think the flip side of that is that, oh, if you spend money on a BMW, that's equivalent to going to like Ruth's Chris every day for a year. Like, that's, the BMWs, or like getting a really nice car, actually starts to affect the age that you can think about retiring at.
And don't you think it's more of like a habitual thing too? Like, if you're willing to, you know, go out to lunch every single day, then you're just going to spend more money in general on other things, rather than just be like, you know, I'll go out a day or two, or, you know, I'll plan like, you know, this is the money I want to spend on lunch this week. So, you know, maybe if I went to 2 cheaper places, then I could go to an expensive place later. Or if I go to 1 expensive place, then I got to, you know, maybe only have 1 cheaper one. Yeah. But finding a way to kind of like strategize it a little bit day to day.
Yeah, it's interesting. So actually, this past week, I what's the word? I spent a little bit more than I indulged. I went out to lunch twice a week this week. And the first time, I think we just went to the mall and got something quick, but it was still like $12-15 just because Tyson's is expensive. But then later in the week, we went out again, and I saw something on the menu that looked really good, and it was, it was like $16 or $18. And normally I'm like, $18 for lunch? That seems crazy. But instead, my train of thought was, well, I spent $15 earlier this week, so $18 is like only a little bit more than going to the mall. But going to the mall is already a little bit more than I'd like to spend on lunch anyway, which is a lot more than I'd spend on lunch if I had just remembered to bring my turkey sandwich from home that day. So it's definitely is a habitual thing.
Yeah, it's amazing how your mind keeps thinking that way.
Yeah, and yeah, I like what you were saying about, if you keep track of it, then you can say, oh, hey, 5 weeks in a row I haven't gone to lunch at all. Maybe I can afford to spend a lot of money on a really nice dinner with some friends, or BMW, or
it might be a little bit more than a few weeks, but
a nice glass of whiskey.
Yeah, and it's just prioritizing, because everybody needs to save some money. Everybody needs to cover their main bills, and then if you really like whiskey, then that's where you spend your little extra money. If you really like strength training, or then get a nice gym membership and buy some nice equipment, and then
you could get a coach. We were talking about how a coach could make some real difference earlier.
That's true. You can get that's true. Coaches, mentors, or even just other friends who have some kind of knowledge you don't are always going to give you kind of that little leg up in training or getting your money in order. I mean, that's the biggest thing too, because I budget, but I don't always follow budget. I'm good at budgeting. Like I know where the money should go. It just doesn't tend to go there, because I feel like if I plan like a month out in advance, like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, and then I'm going to get paid here and here. All right, so I can kind of see where it's going to go, when it's going to go. But if I don't have that in order, and I just have a regular budget that doesn't account for these little extra side things, then at the end of the day, I'm like, just throw my hands in there and feed.
Yeah, it can definitely be. I don't know. One thing that surprised me is that sometimes. So actually, recently I waited too long to buy a plane ticket for something that I needed to go to, and that probably cost me $100. And like buying it 2 weeks in advance instead of 4 weeks in advance or something like that. And those unexpected things can add. So it's worth having your priorities in order, so that when something like that comes up, it doesn't throw everything into pieces.
So. It's tough though. It's really tough.
Yeah, I like what you said, that it's often easy to see where the priorities should be. But
yeah, I mean, that's just the age-old, you know what you should do. You just don't know where to do it.
But if you don't do it, did you really know what you should do?
Alright, that's a little too meta.
It's Plato.
Okay, whatever.
To know the good is to do the good. Come on, Daniel, weren't you paying attention?
Now you just sound like a Rastafari. Yeah, man. To do the good, man. But, yeah. Cover a lot of bases there too.
Consistency is key.
Whiskey is key.
But consistency is key. With both finance and that's something that, actually this is another throwback to high school. I'll hop back. One of my favorite quotes from the Brothers K has to do with ethics. But it's something like, it's easy to, I can easily imagine myself, if the ordeal were to be quick, public, and in the sight of all, and to save the world, I can imagine myself willing to
being the hero.
Yeah, to be the hero, to sacrifice myself for the good of mankind. But if I'm forced to be in a room with somebody for a couple weeks, then everything about him will start to irritate me. The way he sniffles his nose, the way he the smell, this little mannerisms will start to get to me. Love in dreams is often a terrible thing. Love in action is a terrible thing compared to love in dreams. And I think that really speaks to the difficulty of faithfulness and diligence in things that aren't, they aren't dramatic or sexy or whatever. Adding those 2.5 pounds every week, or not going out to lunch.
Nothing sexy about that.
But consistency is really key, both in lifting and in personal finance, in relationships, and I think in ethics.
For sure.
So, it's not always flashy.
No. put the work in and get it done. Celebrate at the end of the day. So that'll be podcast episode 7 again with my good friend Tim.